Welcome back, guys. In this video, we'll learn how to cut this outfit that I had posted. I decided to do a tutorial on how I went about it. So the first thing to note when you see a star is to just analyze the star. This is a princess cut with a peplum, a 720 peplum. If you can look closely, you see the joining at the center. It has a cap sleeve, and the skirt is just a straight skirt. So I'm going to cut show you how to cut the skirt first, then the top and the sleeve. It's a power pack tutorial, so guys, just click on the like button and subscribe if you're not yet subscribed. And let's get into the tutorial. I'm going to cut the skirt first. So I started with folding my skirt into two, and I marked my from my waist to my hip of 9 inches. Then from my waist to my knee I marked 19 inches, and then my full length, which I added 2 inches to it. Note that for your knee, you're going to take your measurement from your waist to your knee and minus 4 inches from it. You're not going to mark directly on your knee, so you'll be able to move, right? So I'm just going to mark a straight line, um just like this. Remember, my waist, my hip, my knee, and then the full length, which I added 2 inches to it. And now for this skirt, I'm going to do the butt contour for the back. So just keep watching. So I'm going to take my circumference now. So my waist divided by 4, I'm going to mark it, and I'll add my dart of 1 inch there, and then 2 inches seam allowance, right? Do the same thing for my hip divided by 4 plus 2 inches seam allowance. I only added the dart of 1 inch on my waist because of course it's only on the waist. I would pinch to sew my dart. Now for my knee, whatever I have on my knee, on my hip, I'm going to minus 2 inches from it. Okay, so I minus 2 inches of what I have on my hip and marked it on my knee. I'm going to connect from my waist to my hip like this, and then to my knee, and then from my knee I'm going to, whatever I marked on my knee, I also mark on my hem, right? Now I'll connect it with a straight line. So this thing just gives you a better fit, right, for your pencil skirt. Make it pencil, right? So now I am done. I'm going to cut this off, and I'm going to use this to cut the back. Remember I said I'm going to do the back, the butt contour. Yeah, it helps you have better fit at the bottom, because of course you don't have a flat bottom, there's a curve there, right? So now I'll cut this off, and I'll use this to cut the back. Now I folded another fabric into two, and I placed my front on it. And note that on this space where my fabric is unfolded, I left about 4 inches there. This is to accommodate the butt contour and my zipper allowance. Okay, so on my hip line, I'm just going to extend my hip line on the front to the back, and then on that line I'm going to come out by 1 inch, and then you're going to mark from your hip line on the back, mark 7 inches downwards like this. I'm going to connect from my waist, connect it to that 1 inch that I marked with my ruler like this, and also connect it down to that 7 inches I marked. Okay, this is the butt contour, right, so that it will accommodate your bum bum, makes it sit properly, and also give you that nice fit at underneath your bum. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is to blend it up like I just did, and then I'll mark my zipper allowance from that new line. I'm marking a zipper allowance of 1.5 inches. So I'm just going to maintain that curve using that line and mark my zipper allowance of 1.5, as you can see. And when I get to that 7 inches line that I marked, I'm going to stop. Okay, I'm just going to connect it like this. This is my zipper allowance, and then from there I'll now continue marking 1.5 inch, but with a straight line this time. So this is how I do my butt contour, and it gives a perfect fit. Okay, if your client has a very big like a bigger body, you can even do 1.5 instead of 1 inch. Okay, but I think 1 inch is just okay. So I just connected my line with the straight curve, and I'm going to cut this off. I'm going to cut this off. But first, I'm going to mark your just notch your zipper allowance, because this two sides of the back is now curved, so that you know where the zipper side is. And then you mark your dart. My dart is my bust span, which is 4 inches, and I added half inch to it for allowance, right? So I'm just going to cut this off, and that is all for the skirt part. Now we'll go over to cutting the top part, which is the half basic block. Okay, and remember I said it's a princess that bustier, and I've already marked my lines. This is my shoulder line, this is my bust or chest line, my bust point, my under bust, and then the length of my half length of this thing I'm working with is actually 17 inches, but I did the front 18 inches because I'll be adding a bust dart to it, a bust dart of 1 inch. So I have 18.5 inches. Half inches is for the seam allowance, right? Now I'm going to start taking my measurements. First, I'm going to take my shoulder measurement of 7.5. That is my shoulder divided by 2 plus half inch seam allowance. I also mark the same thing on my chest line, and then I'm going to rule it with a straight line. Just connect them like this with a straight line. And then the next thing I'm going to do is to mark my shoulder slope of 1 inch, and then I'll take my bust span. The bust span is actually 4 inches, which is your nipple to nipple divided by 2. Nipple to nipple is 8, divided by 2 is 4. So I mark 4 inches from my center front there on my waist. I also marked it on my bust point, and on my bust point I came down by 1 inch. So I'm going to take my darts now. I'm taking 1.5 inch on each side, because the bust of the person I'm working with is actually 40 inches, I guess. Yes, 40 inches. You have if your bust is less than 40, you can take 1.25 on each side, or even 1 inch on each side. So I took 1.5 inch on my waist and on my underbust, and I connected it like this. Okay, so now I'm going to take my the princess dart, the princess cut, to take that on the armhole. Now I'm going to measure half of my armhole is 7 inches there from my shoulder slope. Okay, which is 3.5 is what I got. I marked it and I came down by 1 inch. Now I'm going to connect it to my bust point like this. The first line I marked and the second line, just connect them. I'm going to blend up. Remember, we took 1 inch here. I'm going to add it back like this, so that you won't have any shortage when joining. And then I'll draw my armhole curve. Now I'm going to take the neck. So I'm doing a neck width of 4 inches. Okay, for that neck I marked 4 inches, and then from there I'll come down by 4 inches, and I'll mark a straight line. Then I'll connect it to my chest line like this to get the shape of that neck. Okay, connect it to your chest line like this, and I also mark my shoulder slope. Now I'll go ahead and blend my bust area to just remove any pointiness. But first, let me take my darts, my bust dart on my side dart. I marked 1 inch. I came down by 1 inches from my bust point. I'm going to connect it like this to that tip. Okay, so that after I close it back, the sides, my front and back would be 17 inches. Now I'm going to take my circumference. So from on my waist, I'm going to mark my waist circumference divided by 4 plus 2 inches seam allowance. Remember, we removed 1.5 on each side, which is 3. I'm going to add it back. So whatever you remove from your darts, you took from your dart, you're going to add it back. I also did the same thing on my waist, divided by waist by 4, and I added 2 inches. And because there was nothing really significant I took from that side out, I just left it like that. I connected it like this, and don't mind this connection, it's looking somehow like this, but it's because I took 1.5 on each side of the waist. But when I join it, everything will balance up. So I'll blend my bust area like this, and then I'm going to cut it out. Remember to add all your necessary allowances. On my neck area, I added half inch. On my shoulder as well, you add half inch. So I'll cut this off. So the paper was folded into two, so I was just cutting the paper into two, cutting it open into two. Then I'll cut my pattern, and I'm not going to cut out this side. Okay, I will just leave it until I close my bust, that so that I'll blend any, if there's any need to blend, I'm going to blend. Remember to add all your necessary allowances. Okay, so now we're done cutting. Remember, I didn't cut the side because I said I want to close it bust that first. So I'll cut open that 1 inch I came down by, and then I'll close it like this. Make sure they match. It matches the first line, that's your bust point line. You're going to use your tape or your cello tape and just close it up. And then the reason for this bust, that it just gives your bodice a perfect fit. It eliminates every or any excess on the sides and just makes your bust really sit well. And you know, so as you can see there is a need for blending because the lines doesn't match again. So I blend it up like this. Now I'm going to cut it off, and now I have my front. Okay, so I have my front now. This is the side front and this is center front. Side will be cut on fold, and this would cut on fold, so we'll have to piece for this one. The next thing is to cut the back. The back is a like normal basic back. Okay, now I marked my seam allowance or zipper allowance of 1.5 inch on that side, and then from my waist I marked my chest line of 8 inches, and then my full length of 17. I told you the full length is 17 inches, but I did 18 for the front because of the bust of one, which after I close the bust, that everything is going to align, right? So I'm going to mark my shoulder like I did for the back, mark my shoulder on the bust line as well, or chest line, connect it with a straight line. Sorry, I'm using a pen for this one. My marker actually stopped showing, but I hope you can see. I also take my bust span of 4 inches like I did for the front on the waist, and on the chest line I'm going to come down. I also take it on my chest line, and then on my chest line I come down by 1 inch. I'll connect it like this to that 1 inch that I came back down by. I'm going to take my darts, half inch on both sides of my darts leg. I'm going to connect it like this to that point. Now I have my darts. I'm going to now take my neck width. I'm doing the same neck width for the front, which is 4 inches, and then for the neck depth I'm going to do 3 inches, but you can do 4 or even do 2 if you want it higher. It depends on you. I'm going to connect it like this. Remember, I'm marking to that on that line. Okay, so I'll take my shoulder slope of 1 inch and then mark my armhole curve. Now take my circumference, which is my bust, divided by 4 plus 2 inches seam allowance. Remember, whatever measurement I'm taking from that line because the other space is for my zipper allowance, right? Okay. I'll do the same thing for my waist. My waist divided by 4 plus 2 inches seam allowance, and I'm going to add back this darts that I'm taking away. I'm going to actually pinch it, so it's half inch on both sides, which is 1 inch. So I'm going to add it back. Now I'm not going to cut through the darts. I'm just going to do the normal pinching, the lazy way, right? The normal pinching that we do at the back. Okay, so this is my zipper allowance, and then I'm done drafting the back. I'm going to cut this out. So guys, please, if you're watching this, kindly hit the like button and subscribe. Okay, please, and don't skip the ads. Just watch the ads. This helps the creator you're on YouTube. It just helps us, all right? So add your necessary allowances. I'm adding half inch on my neck and half inch on my shoulder, and then I'm going to cut this out. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to draft the peplum. Okay, the peplum, I told you it's a 720 peplum, which is 360 times 2. So my waist, the waist I'm working with is 36 inches. Okay, so I'm going to divide my waist by 2. This is the formula for getting the 720-degree flare. Divide your waist by 2. So the waist divided by 2 is 36, divided by 2 is 18. So half of your flare is what you use and cut. But I'm going to add 1 inch allowance to 18, which is 19. So I will divide 19 by 6.28. When I divide 19 by 6.28, which is the formula for getting a flare or a circle, I will get 3.0, which is basically approximately 3. Right? So I'm going to be, my radius is 3 inches. Now the length of this flare is going to be 9 inches. So you see how I folded my fabric into 4, okay? And I'm going to mark my radius right now. So because my radius is 3 and the length of my flare is 9, that means I should have 12 inches on each size of my fold. This will help you not to waste your fabric. Okay, so the radius plus the length of your flare is what you should fold. All right, so this is the folded area, and now I'm going to mark my radius of 3 inches. Remember I said it is your waist divided by 2. What you get, you're going to divide it by 6.28, but make sure you add 1 inch seam allowance. So I'm marking 3 inches from that apex. Mark 3 inches round. Remember I said your waist divided by 2, whatever you get, add 1 inch to it and divide it by 6.28. That means you're cutting 360 flare into 2, but the radius or the circumference remains the same. The only thing is that it will make it fuller, right? So I've done marking my radius, and from that point I'll mark the length of my flare, which is ordinary, it's supposed to be 8 inches, but I added 1 inch to it, 1/2 inch for joining the top area and 1/2 inch for the down area. I hope I'm well understood. So I'll take 9 inches all the way around, maintaining that chalked radius that I already marked. So I'm just going to connect it like this. So what I'm cutting now is half of my waist circumference. So I'm going to cut 2 of it. So in total I have 12 inches, right? Okay, so I'll cut this radius out. I'll also cut this side out. So at the end, I'm going to have 2 pieces of it. Okay, I also fold my fabric like this into 2 and then into 4, because I want to use that one I already cut to cut another one. Okay, so I'll fold my fabric again into 4, place this one on it and cut it. So I'll have to, now I'm going to slash one end of it open, just one, slash both of them, because I'll be joining them. Remember I told you there's a joining in front, so you join both of them to make it one. I'll cut exactly this on my lining because I'll be turning this with my lining. Okay, join this and join the lining and use the lining to turn it. You can add your interface on it, the hard or the soft one. You can even add a crinoline depending on the effect you're trying to achieve. Okay, then we are done with the peplum. The next thing is to join it and fix it on my body. As you can see, I've already finished my bodice. I will join the peplum on it. Now the next thing is my sleeve, which is the last thing. Now I'm going to draft or cut a cap sleeve. It is a cap sleeve with a little gathered on the shoulder area. So this is an illustration. Usually when we are drafting our sleeve, this is the shape we usually get. But what we need is just the cap, okay, like this. I think that is why it's called a cap sleeve. So I'm going to fold my fabric into two, and now I'm going to mark 6 inches as the length of my sleeve, okay. And then for the width, I'm going to also mark 6 inches. Now the way how I get my width is the bicep of the person usually, and I will minus 2 from it. But I'm not minusing anything because it has gathered on, like it has some gathered at the shoulder area. So I just connected with a curve like this. I'm going to cut this out. So this curved area is a part you attach on your sleeve, okay. By the time we gather this like this on the shoulder area, this is what we are trying to achieve. So I'm going to cut 2 pieces of this. I'll cut another one to make it 2 because of course it's 2 sleeves, and then I'll also cut exactly the same thing on my lining because I'll be using my lining to turn it. By the time I do the join it and do the gather, this is what I'm trying to achieve, the cap sleeve, right? I'm going to cut the lining and use the lining to turn it, and then I'll attach it to my sleeve. Now it's time to attach it to my sleeve. I'm done turning it with the lining, and I notched the center like this. So what I'll do now is I've trimmed my armhole. Then from my armhole, I'm going to mark where I want it to stop. I marked 5 inches from my shoulder, and then I notch for both the front and the back, and here is where it will stop. By the time I sew it and gather this excess at the top on the shoulder area, this is what I'm trying to achieve. I'll finish the down part with my bias, and that's all for this tutorial, guys. I've done everything, joined everything, and look at how it's looking. Please guys, if you found this helpful, just click on the like and subscribe button, please. It helps me. And please drop your comments if you have any. I hope this tutorial was helpful. Thank you so much for watching to the end, and I'll see you in my next one.